Hi, everyone. This is Jason, and welcome back to the show. In today's episode, I sit down with Doctors Andrew Chesnut and Dr. Kate Kingsbury, the leading authorities on Santa Muerte. We discuss Santa Muerte, we discuss the Showtime series Penny Dreadful City of Angels, and we discuss the fastest growing religious movement in the West. Before we begin, please subscribe. Dr. Andrew Chesnut is the leading expert on Santa Muerte, and he is professor of religious studies and holds the Bishop Walter F. Sullivan Chair in Catholic Studies at Virginia Commonwealth University. He is the author of the first and only academic book in English on Santa Muerte, Devoted to Death, Santa Muerte, the Skeleton Saint, which is now in its second edition. Dr. Kate Kingsbury obtained her doctorate in anthropology at the University of Oxford and is author of the forthcoming book, Daughters of Death, the Female Followers of Santa Muerte. Dr. Kingsbury is Adjunct Professor at the University of Alberta, Canada. Dr. Kingsbury also works pro bono for a nonprofit organization, Uganda for Her, which aims to empower and educate girls in Uganda. We're going to link their websites, their social media, and article post in the description below. Please give them a follow, and now on with our show. So, everyone, thank you for joining me today. My guests today are Dr. Andrew Chesnut and Dr. Kate Kingsbury. They're two authorities on the religion of Santa Muerte, and they're going to be talking to me today about not only Santa Muerte, but also the Penny Dreadful City of Angels series on Showtime, and we're going to talk about a little bit the ins and outs of the show that they've noticed, the things that they noticed that Hollywood has yet again gotten wrong about a subject. So thank you both for joining me today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's our pleasure, Jason.
So to get started, well, Dr. Chestnut, I read your book, Devoted to Death, so I know how you got into this research, but if you could, whoever would like to go first, Dr. Kingsbury, maybe you'd like to go first. How did you get into researching Santa Muerte?
Well, like you, I read Dr. Chesnut's book. In fact, I sat it for one of my classes that I teach at the University of Alberta. I teach the anthropology of religion. And I happened to be down in Mexico on holiday, but as an anthropologist, I'm not very good at just sitting on the beach with a mojito in my hand, like a lot of people are, doing nothing. So I was bored and I was determined to find a Santa Muerte shrine. So I started asking around, and locals told me that there was one, but about an hour and a half away. Now it so happened that I went on a turtle tour, one of those cute tours where they give you like a little turtle that's just hatched out of an egg and you have to release it into the sea. But again, this was not enough for me. And I noticed the guide was a pretty friendly fellow. So I roped him into finding this Santa Muerte shrine and started telling him, come on, I'll make it worth the while, extra tip at the end of the trip, blah, blah, blah. Let's just find the shrine. So he agreed after the tour was over, to the horror of some of the people on the bus who had no idea who Santa Muerte was, and when they saw the shrine got a massive shock. But he agreed to help me find it. And it was actually quite late at night by the time we did find it on this massive detour. And it was just so beautiful, the shrine with all the candles. It felt very atmospheric. And I met the owner of the shrine, this sweet little old lady, and we just immediately had such a great connection that I thought, I can't just visit the shrine once. I have to come back again. So I did. So I came back the following year, not on a holiday this time for research. And then I came back the year after that again. So purposely to do research on La Santa.
Nice. And well, Dr. Chestnut, briefly for those who may not have read your book, how did you first get into the research and study of Santa Muerte?
Yeah, I'm a specialist in the religions of Latin America. Okay. And for my third book, I thought I would tackle a monumental topic. And one of the most important figures on the Latin American religious landscape is the Queen of Mexico, the Virgin Guadalupe, who's also the Empress of the entire Americas.
Right.
And so I was 2 years into a book project on her, but felt a lack of passion. And that's probably because lots of books have been written on the Virgin of Guadalupe. And so in this context of research malaise, in March of 2009, Santa Muerte appears on my laptop. Not this one. I've got an upgrade lately. Beckoning me to contemplate her. More specifically, it was the news that the Mexican army had gone in with bulldozers and backhoes to obliterate some 40 Santa Muerte shrines on the Texas-Mexico and your California-Mexico border.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did a quick Google search and figured out that the then President Felipe Calderon administration had fingered Santa Muerte as religious enemy number one in his ratcheted up war against the cartels, drug war in Mexico, giving kind of spiritual sustenance to the cartels. And so I did a quick Google search. I saw that in English, there is almost nothing written on her academically, in Spanish, just a bit. So I consulted with colleagues, friends, family members, and within a couple weeks, I decided to turn my back on the Virgin Guadalupe and delve into this book project on Santa Muerte with the goal of publishing the first academic book in English, which I did. So Devoted to Death came out in 2012, first academic book in English, and second edition came out in 2017. So it was the news of the Mexican army going after her as a so-called narco saint that really was the catalyst for my research interest.
Now and it's just gone into its second edition, right?
Yes. Well, yeah, 3 years ago in 2017. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I still have the first edition. I need to get the second edition.
You need an upgrade.
I need an upgrade. So it's one of the things that made me want to talk to you both was because last year, when everything is last year now, right? We were at Hollywood Forever. It's a Los Angeles cemetery. Every year they have Day of the Dead celebration.
Day of the Dead, right.
So we were driving home, and I was sitting in the passenger seat. My girlfriend was driving, and I happened to look at this storefront. We were stopped at a red light, and there was all this blue light coming out, and it drew my attention, of course, right? So I looked in, and there was this massive Santa Muertes there.
Were you at Melrose?
Yes, you know that
one. Of course, yeah, I've been there, right? Uh-huh.
So I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, let me find out a little bit more about that, and then it just started to blossom from there. So, Dr. Kingsbury, let me ask you about the growing following. There's people on both sides of the border who are devotees of Santa Muerte. Why do you think that is? What do you think it is about Santa Muerte that gets people more inclined to pray to her than to traditional saints for whatever they may need?
Absolutely. This is a mushrooming movement, which, as Andrew pointed out in his book, there's probably about 10 to 12 million followers at this point. And I think there's several factors that attract people to Santa Muerte. First of all, she's a very multifaceted miracle worker. So you can ask her, and if you want in a bit, we can go over that, and I've got some candles to show your viewers. You can ask her for all sorts of different favors, from matters of the heart to, asking her for success in financial ventures, but also, unlike within the Catholic Church or the Protestant Church even, you can ask her for the naughty stuff as well. So here I have a black candle. Now, be careful of this, because I do own it, so you better be nice to me, Jason. Because the black candle is used in black magic and for hexing and reaping vengeance on your enemies. And in fact, it says on it, muerte contra mis enemigos, if you look at it right there. So what you can do with this candle is you can etch the initials of someone that you hate, for example, within the candle, and light it, and then people believe, that person will be hexed and cursed. And you can ask Santa Muerte all sorts of amoral things. And I found, letters in Santa Muerte chapels of devotees asking, for example, not necessarily narcos. People always think it's narco saints, asking her to kill their enemies. But a lot of women, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, right? A lot of women are very angry when their boyfriend or their husband leaves them for somebody else. And I found quite a few letters of women saying, so-and-so, Joe, let's call him Joe Blog, but I wouldn't be called that in Mexico, probably more likely Juanito, Juan than Joe. He left me for another woman, so curse him. I hope he turns to drugs, to vices, loses his job, his current woman deserts him, and, he finds himself out on the street. So those kinds of petitions. So also you can ask for things of a sexual nature. Here I have the red candle of love. So people use the color red for love. And obviously you can use this for regular love magic. Please bring me a husband, blah, blah, blah. But, if you have a more sexy, salacious petition in mind, then you can also ask La Santa for that. So she is known because she's deaf. Deaf judges nobody. So you can ask her for anything, no matter your background, if you're a narco, if you're a sweet housewife, and you can ask her for all manner of petitions and she's not going to judge you. She's open to LGBTQ. It doesn't matter your age, your education. This is a very inclusive faith, and I think that makes it very attractive to people.
Gotcha. So, okay, and following that, Dr. Chesnut, is it closer to, say, paganism than it is Catholicism? Because a lot of the candles that Dr. Kingsbury referenced are used in pagan rituals too for basically the same thing.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. In fact, I think that's a question in my 11 years of research that I've never gotten. That depends, because as Dr. Kingsbury pointed out, there are some 10 to 12, probably closer to 12 million devotees, mostly in Mexico and the United States, but also throughout the Americas and even in Europe now. So there's a big difference often between devotees in the United States, Canada, and Europe than there is in Mexico. But still, the great majority of devotees are Mexican. And for still the great majority of Mexican devotees, so much of the way that they approach the folk saint Santa Muerte is really predicated on folk Catholic rituals and beliefs. Right. The epic public worship service to Santa Muerte is called the Santa Muerte Rosary Service, which first started in the notorious Mexico City barrio Tepito. And that's basically the same rosary dedicated to the Virgin Mary, just switching out the name of Santa Muerte sometimes for the Virgin Mary. The way that people approach Santa Muerte is very similar to the way that they approach Catholic saints as well. But yeah, no doubt, especially for African American and white American, Asian American, and also a lot of European devotees, it's much more of a pagan, neo-pagan type religiosity, because most of these folks didn't grow up in Catholicism, unlike Mexico, which has the second largest Catholic population on earth. Right. And so I think we'd have to mostly distinguish between Mexican devotees and non-Mexican devotees in the US, Canada, and Europe. But yeah, so especially for those non-Mexican devotees, there are strong pagan and also New Age elements as well.
Right, because I'm noticing more and more New Age bookstores, things that cater to that market, they also have Santa Muerte paraphernalia as well. I wanted to
jump in there and just say, it's a very syncretic faith. So we're seeing elements not only from Catholicism, but even influences possibly, certain authors have noticed that, and Andrew, you've noticed that as well, from witchcraft elements from Spain, which came in during the colonial era. As Dr. Chesnut pointed out, we're also seeing New Age elements, even combining aspects of Santeria, which is an Afro-Cuban religion. So we have a 7-colored candle in Santa Muerte, and that comes really from Las Siete Potencias, from Afro-Cuban and African influences.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I know that in the different candles I've seen, there's solid color ones, and then there's multicolored candles too. So what is it about the multicolored one that's different than the solid color ones?
Well, yeah, the as Dr. Kingsbury pointed out, the primary multicolored one is the 7-power one, which combines, fuses all the main colors of the cult, because many folks aren't looking for just one type of miracle. They're looking for miracles on multiple fronts, right? Not only health, not only wealth, but health and wealth, and maybe love as well. And as Dr. Kingsbury, after she flashed our Death the Enemy's black candle, she went ahead very appropriately and flashed us the red candle. And by our count, still the most popular colored votive candle in Mexico is that red candle, not of blood and violence, but of affairs of the heart. So still her historic role that anthropologists first report to us in the 1940s through the 1980s in Mexico of only working love magic still is really important, and especially for female devotees, and especially for Mexican female devotees.
Gotcha. Dr. Kingsbury, there you go. I thought we had you muted. Sorry. Can you hold up the multicolored candle again?
So here is the multicolored candle. So we have red at the top, so that's for love. We've got blue, which is more for academic ventures and success. We've got green, which is generally for justice. We have a not very good yellow here, but it should be yellow, which is usually for attracting money and wealth. And then, of course, we've got that naughty black at the bottom. And here also I have a candle for money, which sometimes, will be a solid gold.
Right.
But here we see that it's yellow and green. So that's really sort of working for devotees in their epistemology, in their way of thinking. These two colors, the yellow is to attract the money, to bring the money, but the green here is also the opening paths. So it's really, when you're combining two colors, you're really sort of getting the benefits of both of those things, so that you can accentuate what you're asking for.
You're like a votive candle superstore up there.
Well, I'm trying to collect them all because I want to actually have an exhibition at some point on Santa Muerte when I get enough funds.
I'll be awaiting the invite to that.
The best I can do in my house is Day of the Dead candles. I can't go further than that.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, my girlfriend would not go for. But are you guys good on time? I want to keep you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because I want to talk to you a bit about the show, Penny Dreadful, City of Angels. And when I first saw the preview, I was very excited for the show because, like I said before, I love LA history and the 30s and 40s. But something that struck me as odd was the appearance of Santa Muerte in the show versus what she looks like in real life. Right?
Is it okay if I riff on this, Dr. Kingsbury?
Go ahead.
Oh, we're going to have to come back to here. Oh, my gosh. Yes, I wish we could flash up on the screen. So the appearance, the attire, the look of Santa Muerte and Penny Dreadful is completely Spanish. In fact, the director of Penny Dreadful, City of Angels himself is Spanish. I just saw he lives in Sevilla. And he patterned the look of Santa Muerte on the Spanish Virgin, the Virgin of Macarena. And I wish I could show you on the screen, but we can Google those images. You'll see that she has the same iconography of this classic Marian advocation from Spain, the Virgin of Macarena. And so there's been a lot of criticism of that, not only from us, but, you know, from a lot of Mexicans and Mexican Americans thinking, oh my God, this Santa Muerte is the quintessential Mexican folk saint, born of fusion of syncretism on Mexican soil. And here she couldn't look more Spanish.
Right.
And so, you know, what's up with that?
Right. So something Hollywood does that where they take something and then.
There's a real problem there because first of all, you know, Santa Muerte appears in two sort of facets which are completely erroneous because you have this Magda character, which, you know, we can get into more on that later. But the quintessential feature of Santa Muerte is she is, as Andrew's Dr. Chesnut's book says, a skeleton saint. Right. So here we have, you know, Santa Muerte. As you can see, this is a skeletal figure, and this is how she is always portrayed, whether it's in a picture that I have here, a statue here, we have a little tiny baby Santa Muerte because people like to carry these around in their pockets. But, you know, even here you see that the face is skeletal, and here we have a pregnant Santa Muerte. But even here, much as part of her face, I hope you can see that, is skeletal. The other part, you know, is flesh, but there's always this skeletal, and here she has these wonderful little bony toes, which I think is fabulous.
Oh, nice.
She is always depicted in every, you know, on a candle, in every way. She's always depicted as a skeleton, and I think this is just a complete lack of understanding of who she is, what she represents, or how to represent her. And my issue with it is that it's total miseducation about Santa Muerte and misappropriation of Santa Muerte.
Exactly.
And the show just completely, I mean, I call it a pestimicide, which is where you get rid of knowledge, you're getting rid of people's knowledge about their faith, and I think that's very insulting to devotees.
And it's also kind of the logical result of Eurocentrism. Again, it's a Spanish director. The general director, Sam Mendes, a British filmmaker, and, you know, most of the cast and crew are British, and so you know, we've got all these Europeans who have but a superficial understanding of a Mexican folk saint, and didn't bother to bring in a team of Mexican or Mexican American directors and writers to do this, even though it's
calling some experts to advise them, because Andrew and I have been called in for films like Bad Boys for Life. We didn't really kind of like the way that they spun Santa Muerte as a narco saint there. Again, at least the details were correct.
Exactly.
But here there's just complete miseducation. It's Eurocentric, it's ethnocentric, and it's extremely insulting, I would say, for any Mexican devotee or anybody who has knowledge of Santa Muerte to see her portrayed in this manner. And furthermore, I really dislike Magda as the chaos demon. I mean, I know that you know, sexy figure in BDSM leather might be appealing to a certain class of viewers, but that completely takes away from who Santa Muerte is. And she was called by the director himself a chaos demon.
Right. I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Back to demonizing faith that isn't Christian, that isn't Catholic. So as soon as a faith is exotic, it's like, oh, it must be demonic, it must be bad, right? And this is so colonial. This is such a neo-colonial mindset where you're taking something that, you know, should be respected, and instead you're just putting, as Andrew said, all this Eurocentric spin on it. You're taking away its origins, and then when you are presenting it, you're presenting it as bad, as demonic, as satanic even. Mm-hmm. And this temptress figure, I mean, I really don't know where they got that from. That has nothing to do with, in my opinion, with Santa Marta.
And as I said today, I think it even contributes to further demonization of Santa Muerte, because we really have to see Magda and Santa Muerte as the black and the white manifestations of Santa Muerte. And the one who has all the screen time so far in the first 3 episodes is Black Santa Muerte Magda, who's fostering, racial warfare,
right,
and pitting brother against brother. And she's the one who has 95% of the screen time so far.
And this is so ironic, because let me just jump in there. The whole thing about Santa Muerte, as I said at the beginning of the interview, is she is inclusive. She is not about racial warfare. She is open to all races. If you ask devotees, she has no race. She is deaf. She's a skeleton. She doesn't have any flesh on her. So she is absolutely non-racist. So to have this Magda character as, and it's very, for me as a feminist, she represents the trope of that evil Eve in the Garden of Adam and Eve, offering stupid Adam, who's never to blame. The guys are never to blame. It's always the woman, right? Coming along with her damned apple, and he's too stupid to know better. So for a show that's supposed to be about, let's talk about race and gender, I think they're shooting themselves in the foot. I think it's kind of stupid at the end of the day. I don't think they thought it out properly.
Well, in my first review of this season, considering how little they actually showed Santa Muerte, I was thinking, why is she even a character in this show? If you just need a demon to show up to LA and cause trouble, you have plenty of other people you can have as a counter to that.
Exactly. And then picking an actress who's unknown and so far is really weak in her character. It's offensive.
Right.
And it's offensive further because it replicates this mission. When the missionaries went out into the New World and they went to places like Mexico and they discovered religions that they weren't familiar with, they're like, that's devil worship, right? These people are worshiping demons. So they're taking that trope and then they're making Santa Muerte into a demon. So that's just extremely insulting, I think, towards people's faith.
Well,
and I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's also so refreshing to have my colleague here, who obviously herself is European, to give us a withering critique of the Eurocentrism of the show.
Well, let me ask you about that. Are you seeing more people, because we mentioned, like you mentioned, Europe and America, are you seeing more people outside of your Latin America, Mexico, becoming involved? You're seeing more?
Yeah. In fact, for 8 years now, there's been a Facebook page for Italian devotees. Last time I checked, there's 100. There's another Facebook for British devotees. We are active on Twitter with a Belgian devotee. So yeah, pretty much every country, at least in Western Europe, has devotees, and I would say probably the UK and Spain would be the leading ones. But yeah, I've even come across devotees from India, from South Africa. I mean, it's globalized, and part of that is because Santa Muerte goes public in 2001, just as social media is becoming really important. And so social media, particularly Facebook, has been a really important platform for her growth and globalization. There's over 1,000 Facebook groups for devotees on Facebook.
Yeah, that's true. Dr. Kingsbury, let me ask you, so with the different paraphernalia, like the candles that you held up, and is that typically what people use in their say rosaries or prayers, or have you seen any other kind of paraphernalia?
Absolutely. So most people will go to a chapel, but most devotees have a little home altar. And so that could be very simple, or it could be elaborate. At the center of that altar, you always have to have, or generally should have, a statue. I mean, some people can't afford that, so they'll just have a votive. But you could have a little baby one like this, because these are affordable for everyone. Right. And then you'll have some candles, and then you have to give offerings, oblations to La Santa. So these typically consist of booze. She likes her booze, her liquor, might be Mexican liquor, like tequila, mezcal, the old Corona beer used to be quite popular, although I hear they're going bust now. So
I wonder why.
Booze, tobacco, which goes back obviously, to indigenous
chocolate.
Chocolate.
Yeah,
Maybe,
chocolate, so food of any kind.
I think you said
flowers are very important. You need to give that water because she is, and this is again where the show Penny Dreadful's completely out to lunch. She's a skeleton saint. She is parched, perpetually parched, because she's got no flesh on her bones. Mm-hmm. So you need to feed her water regularly. Thirsty. Yeah, right. She's very thirsty.
Well, do you think the reason why people can easily get into this belief is because most cultures have some aspect of death that they can relate to? Like, it's not that hard to make the leap.
Obviously, everybody dies, right? I mean, it's going to happen to the best of us and to the worst of us. And I think the other thing that I've been writing about recently, the other reason why I think people can get into it so easily, is you're not reliant on a church. There is no sort of official Santa Muerte church in the way that there is a Catholic church. There is no official clergy. This is a very loosely organized religion where you can be completely autonomous and do everything within your home. Go and buy it, and then pray as and when you need to, and completely take matters into your own hand. And people have really, the church has fallen out of favor. I mean, the Catholic Church with all these sex scandals, etc., etc. People are not wanting to go to church that much anymore. It's gotten a bad rap. So being able to do all these things alone, at home, independently. And, we're living in an age of individualization where we're much more, living at home alone as opposed to in large communities. So being able to do things individually rather than having to go out into the community, to the church, depending on some priest, that you might worry about, it is a lot more empowering for people, and in particular for women, I think.
And I would also add that part of her international appeal is that, on one hand, yes, she's quintessentially Mexican, but on the other hand, and even many Mexican devotees will assert this, is that, at the end of the day, death has no nationality. She has no gender. And so she crosses borders, she jumps across walls on borders. And so that kind of lack of any specific national origin also is appealing to a lot of people as well, and I think it's added to her globalization.
That's true. Okay, so my last question has to do with let's see, how do I put this? The media always focuses on the negative. And what would you say to those people that only paint it as a negative, as a stay away from this? What would you say to them to maybe try to change their mind? Dr. Kingsbury, what do you think?
Well, I think the media, is always looking to sensationalize. That's what they do, right? And that's how they spin their stories, and that's how they get their audience roped in. And I think that's also why I wasn't happy with the depiction of Santa Muerte on Penny Dreadful, because we had an either-or situation with Magda and then the woman dressed in what was that, like a tablecloth that she had on. And I think that there's a lot more to Santa Muerte than meets the eye. For example, here we have Santa Muerte with a baby in her belly, and this is for women who want to get pregnant, who have been unable to conceive. And it shows how death is associated with life and how women are turning to the saint, to have babies. I mean, here we have a candle for health. People are turning to the saint for faith healing, for curing themselves. So I think that before you start judging Santa Muerte or any religion, this extends to voodoo and many other religions that have been demonized, you need to try and find out a bit more about the facts. Who are the people who are really devotees, and how are they using this faith?
Well, and as with anything, one person's cult is another person's worldwide religion. So I mean, and sometimes people throw that word around to demonize when once upon a time Christianity was a cult.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. And the great majority of new religious movements fail within years. So the fact that almost 20 years later, after this emerging public in 2001, is now booming with at least 12 million devotees tells you that it's here to stay.
Exactly.